Hello, wanted to make a little bit of a beginner guide for Frost so I can kind of link in future guides so I don't, make all my guides 50 minutes long. So let's just go ahead and get started. I'm going to kind of just go over everything you need to know if you don't really have a great understanding of Frost. So we're going to start with what the spec is about. And the main thing that kind of defines Frost is this Shatter mechanic where you multiply the crit strike chance of your spells against frozen targets by initially 1.5 and an additional 50% crit chance. So a good example of this is if you have like 20% crit and you hit a frozen target, which we'll define later, then you would have 30% plus 50%, and that's 80% crit chance with that hit against the frozen enemy. So you can see you get quite a substantial amount of extra crit chance. So it's important that you do whatever you can to hit against the frozen enemy, right? Because that just does a lot more damage. Now, what the heck is a frozen enemy? So there's a number of different ways you can like freeze things with your spells. Namely, this is done through a very modern way, right? So if you go right past this, first of all, you can see that Ice Lance's damage is triple against frozen targets. But the next thing is one of your main procs, Fingers of Frost, that you just get from Frostbolt or Frozen Orb, and that causes your Ice Lance to deal damage as if the target were frozen. So that gets it the massive crit damage boost and the triple damage that the base spell tells you it gets. And that's just the, proc that's on the side of your screen right here and gives you one Ice Lance that you then shoot and is frozen. The main way that we get this frozen effect on all the rest of our spells that isn't Ice Lance is through Winter's Chill, which is also right here, on the tree, where it says that you have a spell called Flurry, and it applies Winter's Chill to the target, and Winter's Chill causes the target to take damage from your spells as if it were frozen. So that comes from Flurry. If you shoot Flurry, you'll notice you actually get 2 stacks of it. So for instance, I could Ice Lance twice, and both those would function exactly the same against this target as if I had used the Fingers Frost, the other proc, for Ice Lance as well. So generally, the whole Frost rotation is about applying Winter's Chill and then shattering spells into it. Every mage spell shatters, okay? Only direct damage ones really consume it. So most of the time, what you'll see is it's like, let me flurry, and then for instance, for base Frost, it's like I'll consume that Winter's Chill with Ice Lance. But I'm still going to use other spells into the Winter's Chill to benefit from it, most notably like Comet Storm. So a lot of times you'll flurry and then Comet Storm and then do 2 Ice Lances, right? Later in the talent tree, though, we do end up taking Glacial Spike, and that's kind of required at the current stage of Frost. And Glacial Spike is that essentially your 3 main rotational abilities, so Frostbolt, Ice Lance, and Flurry, Ice Lance specifically when it's a frozen Ice Lance, generate an Icicle, and once you get to 5, you're able to cast Mega Frostbolt, essentially. It's just a big Glacial Spike. And so you really want to shatter this. You really want to hit this into Winter's Chill, because that's the only way to shatter it, really. So for instance, you could technically like Flurry and then Glacial Spike and Ice Lance, and then, that would replace one of your Ice Lances after the Flurry. The important thing to note that they did change in 11.1 is that Fingers of Frost no longer consumes Winter's Chill. So if I have, for instance, if I have Fingers of Frost and I Flurry, instead of getting 2 Ice Lances here, I actually could get 4, because the Fingers of Frost ones don't consume the Winter's Chill. So you do a lot of Ice Lance in there. But in general, your highest priority with Winter's Chill is usually to use your cooldowns, like Comet Storm into it and consume it with Glacial Spike, but your base level is doing it with Ice Lance. Now, the thing I haven't mentioned is that Flurry actually has multiple projectiles, as you can kind of see whenever you send it out, and each of those actually applies this 2 stack of Winter's Chill. So something we can do is precast a spell like Glacial Spike or Frostbolt into it, and that is actually going to sneak in between those flurry projectiles and benefit from one of the Winter's Chills we wouldn't otherwise be able to consume. And then I'm still able to do like the 2 Ice Lances afterwards. For Glacial Spike, it doesn't really matter. You actually just want it at any point in that period. But normally, the only way we shatter like Frostbolt is by doing a Frostbolt into a flurry. And then, right now I would Comet Storm because it's up, and then I would use Glacial Spike into Ice Lance. Okay, so that's kind of like the basics of how you shatter and kind of what Winter's Chill is and everything. It's not the only way we can apply Winter's Chill. We also have an AoE ability that does it, Coldest Snap, makes your Cone of Cold have 45-second cooldown and reset some abilities, and then apply Winter's Chill and AoE. So that's another way we shatter. The third way, which is usually not mentioned too often, is by our freezes. So a freeze is specifically a root that's also just like frost. So for instance, if I use Frost Nova here, you'll see they have like these little frost circles around them. That's not a super reliable way to shatter. Technically, it would work with everything that I've told you before. Like I could Glacial Spike into Frost Nova and it would shatter that Glacial Spike, or I could Comet Storm into Frost Nova or Ice Nova and it would shatter that. Normally, we don't really pay too much attention to these. It's good to use Ice Nova. So like Comet Storm into Ice Nova is a big thing that we do in like AoE. But this is only really possible in Mythic Plus because any boss level enemy is just not going to be freezable. The other thing that's important to know is when you use Icy Veins, you use this little water elemental guy, and he actually has his own spell called Freeze, and he casts it. So it's just free for us. So like you could just put your stuff out and then you just cast Freeze. So a lot of times you'll use Freeze pretty frequently, but less so kind of with the other ones. Ice Nova is usually used for damage as well, but Frost Nova is almost never used. It just depends on like the current patch tuning. But yeah, you'll use this freeze, so you'll want to macro it for when you're in Icy Veins. But yeah, that's kind of the basics of how you do the proc management stuff. So based on what I've told you, right, with the precast and the flurries and everything, this upper buff is something that just gives you an additional charge of flurry, essentially. Your rotation is just getting to like 5 icicles, and then you would want to shatter Glacial Spike in any way you could possibly. But here, let me just send this so I can show you kind of what you would do from a base level. Okay, so let's say I'm like entering a pack, I got all my CDs and whatever. I'm just gonna Frostbolt into Flurry to benefit from that extra Winter's Chill consumption. And then I'll Comet Storm because it's off CD, and I'll Ice Lance to consume the Winter's Chill. And now I have Glacial Spike, so I'm gonna use that to consume this Winter's Chill. I'm back at no Winter's Chill, so I just Frostbolt into Flurry again, and then use Ice Lance because I can't Glacial Spike. And then here, like I'll Frostbolt into Flurry, and then I'll Glacial Spike to consume it. Use my Fingers Frost, still got one Winter's Chill, so I Ice Lance again, right? So it's nothing really complex. You just have to get a little bit used to it, and then there's some other abilities to throw into the mix. But yep, that's Frost Mage in a nutshell, and hopefully you're now more adequately able to listen to whatever notepad ramblings I have in whatever guide you're coming from. I'll also link, if you're interested, down below a Shatter deep dive. There's a lot more intricacies to Shatter than really what I covered here. So if you're really interested in learning about it, because it is honestly one of the most unique class mechanics in the game, or spec mechanics in the game. So it's pretty fascinating, kind of the depth that really exists in it. So if you're interested in learning that, you can do it. Anyway, leave any comments, questions down below. Thanks for watching.